Okay, so let's begin, shall we? Hello and welcome. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Dan Candido with Interfacing Technologies, and I'll be your moderator. Let me first thank you for taking the time to attend today's webinar. Before we begin, let's look at a couple items of note. If you have any questions, simply type them into the questions module to the right of your screen on the control panel. And if you think you've missed something, well, not to worry. You'll receive an email in about 24 hours after the webinar with a link to the webinar, link to today's slide deck, and contact information to view and share. Let's look at today. We're going to do a very quick About Us featuring Mirko Thomas from Interfacing. We'll get on with our agenda with our guest speaker, the challenge of traditional QMS, opportunity of a digital management system, a live demo with Interfacing's own Mirko Thomas. We'll continue on with our guest speaker, base GXP requirements according to Part 11, and computer system validation lifecycle, and our services for the industry. Following that, we'll have a Q&A to answer any of the questions that you have. So a little bit about us. I'm going to hand this one over to Mirko. Mirko?
Well, thank you, Dan. Hello, everyone. Nice to have you today. My name is Mirko Thomas. I'm a regional manager for Europe at Interfacing. And let me give you a quick introduction to Interfacing. So we are around since more than 25 years. Leading analyst Gartner lists us currently in 4 of their market reports in the Magic Quadrant. Among them EBPA and Business Operating Systems. On this slide, there's really one aspect which I would like to point out, which is that we are ISO 27001 certified and also GDPR certified. And actually, these are 2 aspects that I will get back to later in the live demo, because then we're going to talk about how our technologies can support your compliance and regulatory management efforts. Well, until then, I'm handing it back to you, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mirko. Okay, well, our guest speaker today is Armin Fiedler, Executive Director of Fiedler Consulting. Prior to building his freelance consulting business in Europe, Armin's unique background in project management and QMS design and implementation led him to prominence as a subject matter expert with a specialization in pharmaceutical and chemical verticals. Most recently, Armin was instrumental in developing the process management organization as part of an overall management system with a major global pharmaceutical company. With 33 years in various leadership roles in these verticals, Armin is here to share his extensive knowledge of QMS with you today. Here to give us a bit of insight into his world is Armin Fiedler. Welcome, Armin.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome also from my side. Let me take over the presentation and I just will start with the first section here. So you see my slides, yeah? Yes, by this slide, I want to discuss the question why the typical QMS organization struggle with digitalization. On the left, you see a visualization I created to summarize the typical QMS elements. Intentionally, I've put regulations in the center. Regulations define how to, for example, validate, how to manage deviations, how to manage change. So regulations are in the center of the quality operations. This kind of regulation centricity leads us to the major challenge. In their own logic, documents have certain transformation history. We once started with handwritten documents. We see a typewriter. Nowadays, we see most of it in Word document. But this ends typically up as free text, which is basically not digitizable at least by its own. This lack of digitization has also consequences for the quality processes, so the operative processes in the quality departments. As the underlying data are not digitized, any kind of automation cannot apply. You see here an example which we will pick up in our demo. We get requirements from external, typically manual. We look which regulations are concerned, typically manual. And we have to train these regulations, and we look, also typically manual, who is concerned by the regulation and who has to be retrained. Based on this, I would like to look a bit on the question what digitization means in this context, as I assume that you nowadays hear in nearly every presentation something about digitization. To make it concrete, let's start on the left with a stack of paper. That is the reality in many companies of the documentation world regarding the regulations. The effort is to bring out of these documents, to transform them to, for example, a process map. I come back to this aspect, to processes with activities. There will be roles in these documents. There might be terms, IT applications, performance indicators, and so on. So there are several elements, and the effort is to transform the written, let's say, information to database fields. But if the advantages are so obvious, the question is why it did not almost happen. I sometimes discuss this question with quality managers, and they often told me, yes, of course, we understand, and that makes a lot of sense. But we have thousands of documents, and to transform them all manually to databases, that would cost us years, and we do not have years of free capacity. Well, the good news is, in this context, that the interfacing software supports this transformation with a unique upload program that is a kind of machine learning algorithm. So you upload a few documents by training the algorithm, and latest after 10 documents or so, the upload program is able to convert any content into fields automatically. After initial load, of course, you have multiple output formats. For example, the traditional PDF output, that goes without saying, but also advanced outputs. And there, the benefits of digitization starts to become reality based on the roles in the database and the tasks which are assigned to the roles in combination with terms and or other elements. You can, for example, create personalized views as an output, personalized in the sense of roles which are assigned to persons, and can build trainings out of it. The next question is, how could a transformation approach look like? We know every company is different, but let's assume as a typical starting point, as a typical base level, that we deal with free text regulations. And these free text regulations are stored in local document management systems. As a first step of the transition, I would recommend to create a process map which ensures two important aspects. On the one hand, we ensure completeness. Yeah, so all processes from end to end in the company are considered here. But even more important, by the strong logic and systematic of the process map, we ensure that there are no overlaps. Yeah, because overlaps are one of the major issues with free text regulations. You repeat information like all I mentioned before, more and more and more. So you have this in many documents, and this is here not the case anymore. You might consolidate your document management systems in this context to one. On the next level, the transformation itself starts. The transformation has to be, we have to consider that certain information are in future stored as master data. Yeah? A role or a term is created in the system only once and referenced in dozens or hundreds of processes. And second, of course, the tasks within the processes are identified so that information from master data plus the information to the specific process creates the new regulation. In this context, companies often decide for a next level IT platform because typically the traditional document management system are not able to cover such requirements. In this context, I just want to mention potential follow-up projects, yeah, to underline the potentials of the effort at all. Yeah, I want to mention here process execution and process monitoring. Let me pick process execution here as the major example. And of course, this would be a separate presentation just to give you a flavor of it. One of the issues of free text regulations, but this applies also to level 2, is that you can never know if what you have trained is really followed. Yeah, so you have to apply a lot of 4I principles and a lot of internal audits to ensure that people follow what is written in the regulations. If we would imagine that we would have a process execution platform which has a technically built-in integrity with the described process here, then it would bring this to a next level, because then it is, yeah, let's call it technically impossible to not follow the procedure. Yeah, so with interfacing automation platform, we have here potentials to move the processes to a next level in the sense of execution. Let me here discuss some aspects of your potential business case. I've collected here financial and non-financial benefits I have seen in previous transformation projects. And of course, we have here several aspects also for your reference. Let me, to maintain the timeline, just pick up 2 or 3 of these aspects. What I mentioned already and what we will see also in the demo are here in the financial dimension, mitigation of redundancies. Yeah, the principle of master data. We maintain one aspect once, and that is then transferred, reused on many places. And second, efficient mass changes, or the potential of the system for efficient mass changes. Yeah, so this contributes substantially to direct financial benefits. In the people dimension, I would like to point our view to those who have execution roles in the procedures. Yeah, so not everybody in the company is from quality, but some, like clinical operations, have to live and have to execute the regulations. And for those persons, of course, a digital solution and IT platform provides a lot of benefits. We have, on the one hand, the opportunity to provide a big picture, so you can drill out of the single process or regulation, and we have the opportunity to drill down, because sometimes the question is, okay, we have here a 50-page document, but what is relevant for me in it? Yeah, so personalized views is here an important aspect. So, and by this, I hand over to Mirko to show you some aspects in the system.
Well, thank you very much, Armin. All right. So today in our live demo, I would like to show you how our technologies make regulatory and compliance management really simple for you. And because the topic of this webinar is to tell you a little bit from the edge of digitization, I will show you some really advanced technologies which are quite unique on the market, and which for sure, at least if you are involved in regulatory management or compliance management, that you will for sure like a lot. So first, let's be clear when I talk about regulatory management or about regulations. So what do we mean with that? I'm bringing this up because regulations is more than just the well-known regulatory frameworks, like, for example, ISO 27001, which is a security framework. To give you one example, so you find that here in my demo system, and it is really already fully documented until the lowest level, so until the level of each and every paragraph. And that is already an important concept to understand. On our platform, you can manage regulations, regulatory frameworks on the detail level, not as a kind of a static document. That doesn't really help. It is important that we have like each and every piece of information individually available, so that we can associate it, for example, with a process or with a document and so on. We will get back to that concept later. But quickly explaining again what we mean with regulation. So again, it's a framework like this. I will in a moment also show you another framework, but it could also be internal policies like this demo company. They have a list of internal security policies, which are also, which you can also fully manage here with a full life cycle, and which are individual digital objects, each one of them, that you can associate with other objects. Or think about supplier agreements, like detailed descriptions on product quality, on supply chain, and so on. Or think about legislation, like anti-money laundering legislation, and so on. I think you get the concept. So our platform really enables you to manage any kind of information which you could kind of categorize as regulatory or compliance information. Another framework, which I've already mentioned, that I would like to show you is the European GDPR Framework, the data protection framework. And what I would like to show you here is when we go, for example, when we browse through the chapters of the regulatory framework and navigate to one of the articles. Again, this article, which is called Communication of a Personal Data Breach. I can go down to the paragraph level. And what is interesting now is when I open here my list of impacts, I can see that this very paragraph has a direct impact on this task here, which is called provide follow-up notification. So when I navigate there, probably better, let's take a look at this in graph view. So when I navigate there, you will notice that here we go, that here is the task to provide follow-up notification, and here is zooming out a little bit, and here are the paragraphs that are associated with this task. So, and for you to understand the concept, so it's like the rule, the regulation is associated with the task. And now in next steps, we could also associate a control with this task, which controls the efficiency of the regulation. Or you could put in a key control indicator or a key risk indicator, and so on. Documents which are compliant to the regulation, and so on and so on. So that is really the goal, to build a repository of rules, regulations, policies that are the enabler for you to reach a status of full compliance. So question now is, now let's look at the first exciting technology which I would like to show you, and that is our Parser. Here is the original document from the European Union, the original GDPR document. It's a massive document, I can tell you. Well, it has hundreds of paragraphs and is really, I mean, let's be honest, who is reading through this all the time to identify the stuff that is relevant for a specific process or a specific task? So what I've already mentioned, it is important for us to break this static document down into reusable objects, into reusable fragments that we can then associate with a task or with a process as shown before. So how can we do that? And we have a piece of technology developed for you, which we simply call the Parser. And here again, it's exactly the same document. I've uploaded it already into the Parser. And it's also, you know, it's quite lengthy. So what I'm going to do now is, so this Parser, as Armin has already mentioned, the Parser is self-learning. So it means, for example, here it starts with article 1. So when I mark the article 1 and tell the Parser that this is the name of a rule, and let's do it properly. So let's teach it a little bit more and say again, article 2. So this is another name of the rule. So, and notice the rest of the document I have not touched yet. So there are other articles like here, article 3, article 4. So let's see what happens when I say parse. And now notice the system, the parser, has automatically recognized all the articles in this static document and allows me now to export these articles into EPC, our digital repository. Let's do one more step just to make really the concept quite clear. So here is article 1, and then below it is the actual content of the article, like we call it the description of the article. So let's tell the system that this part is a description of the rule. Probably let's see if teaching one article is already good enough. I click parse again, and now a lot of yellow might appear. It does. So it's the rest, as you can see, the rest of the document has been recognized by the parser as description text for each of the articles. So this is really an amazing concept. And try to think about this. What kind of use cases we can come up with for this technology? You know, each and every document that has an impact on your compliance status, or that has an impact on your policies, your business policies, your supplier policies, and so on. You can use the parser to fragment these static documents into digital objects. And the result, so this is the GDPR framework. So the result you can really see here. So it's really the, no, sorry, I'm in the wrong. Now I'm well, it's here in the, I'm now on another server, but doesn't matter. So it's here really, it's broken down into all of these. Oh, I'm in process now. Now I know why I'm a little bit confused. So here we go again. So here is really the GDPR text broken down in all these, in the articles and into the paragraphs. Okay. We are often asked, so okay, it's good. So that's the initial load. It's the, like the initial digitization of a regulatory framework. So what's next? So I mean, what if the regulation changes? So how are we getting aware of such changes, first of all, and then how can we implement them? How do we know what the changes are referring to? So first of all, where can you get them from? Just a quick, let's say a quick idea for you. So there are regulatory intelligence providers out there, service providers, which monitor globally these the regulations for you, and we are collaborating with a few of them. So it means we have a technology in place which can automatically transfer regulatory changes into EPC and kind of trigger an implementation workflow, automatically triggered. If you're interested in this kind of technology, please get in touch with us, and we are happy to go into detail with you and to explain you more. Today, because of let's say of the time restriction, what I will show you is when we receive a regulatory change. So what's happening then, and then again, what technology does interfacing provide to you? To make it easy to implement a change. So what I do now is I show you another process where regulations are associated with or applied to. So here is a process. It's actually a finance process, a process from finance, an invoice capturing process. And here, for example, here is a task. It's a whole sub process called enter invoice into system, where a regulation is applied. In this case, it is actually a policy, a business policy, a financial policy from us. It's called day limit always less than $150. So let me make this association also visible in our what we call our detail view. So again, the rule day limit always less than 150 is applicable to this process. So let's take a look. At this rule. Notice that the system has automatically forwarded me to the rule management module, and here we have our rule. So allow me to make a small change to the rule. I delete some text and probably make a line break here and add another text saying text added. All right, so let's say this is allowed a change to the policy. I know it's a simple change, but the concept is important that I would like to show you. Right, now let's say the people responsible for this policy, they do their job in a way that they kind of get the change approved. Please remember, if you don't know it yet, our platform has fully automated workflows for endorsement, for approval, gives you tools like version management, version comparison, and so on. So it's really a whole kit of tools that is available to you. I'm doing it now, let's say, on the fast track. So I simply publish this new version. I have to give a final confirmation, which is okay. All right, and now let's get back to the process where this rule, this policy had been applied to. And what you will notice is that, well, let me first navigate there. Here we go. Okay, what you notice now is this red frame. It hasn't been there before. It tells me now that this version of the process is out of sync. Why? Let's take a look. Because the rule, our policy, has been modified. So now, and here, by the way, is also the in-app, the so-called in-app notification is also popping up. I would also have received an email if I was the owner of this process. So several communication channels available. And now I could, if, let's say, if this is a trivial situation, I could just simply synchronize, meaning agreeing that I would like to associate the latest version, the new version of the rule with the process. But again, we have here some really fancy technology available for you. It is quite often, especially in heavily regulated industries, it's not that trivial, right? So you have to get a better understanding of what it will mean to implement this rule and to the changed rule to the process. So I have several tools available, which I would like to show you. So first of all, I can create an improvement request, which triggers an automated workflow that helps me to make sure that somebody gets assigned to implement this change rule and to make an analysis about the impact of the change. So please implement. Let me just write a comment here and notice what happens next. Our collaboration tool pops up and it tells me that there is an action required from me, which is about implementing this new regulation. So I have now several tools available to work on this. So what I can do, for example, is I would probably start with an impact analysis. So what I mean is, so this is the sub-process that we have been talking about, where the rule is associated with. So let me switch to our graphic impact view. And now here is again, it's enter invoice into system. Here is our sub-process. And I see now that this sub-process is associated with several other objects, like this KPI, number of active instances, like with this document, an SOP, like with a rule, with a role, and so on and so on. And now let's pretend if I change this process in order to incorporate the new rule, this might have an impact on this asset, which is SAP. It might be we might have to reconfigure something. So I can do another drill down and can just oops, sorry for that. So I can do a drill down and can do further analysis. The same, by the way, is available here in our detail view, where I can do the same kind of analysis. Well, I'm a little bit fast tracking now. So we have there are more tools available to you, like out-of-the-box reports, which show you dependencies and so on. So there is a lot of technology available for you to support your regulatory change management. Let's say here we are done with our analysis and we are fine with it. So by the way, I have to move back. Here is it, back to the process level. Here is the action required. Let's say I have done my job. I'm fine. I'm confident with what I've been doing. So I'm updating the status to implement it. I have to leave a comment. I'm making this quick now. I update. And the last step for me is to actually synchronize, meaning that's the final step to kind of enable that this latest version of the rule gets associated with the process. So let's do that. And here we go. And the last thing I would like to show you as part of this live demo is that you have even more tools and methods available to kind of govern and guide these kind of regulatory change management activities. Because if I bring up the details, let's say the settings of this process, and I navigate here to a section in the properties, there's a question which is, how strict is this process? And that's exactly what we have just been witnessing. So the feature is what we call it data harmonization. And it is currently set on never harmonize any minor or major changes, which gives us high control. And that is exactly what has just happened. So it means that the rule has changed, and I always want to have the full control if it gets implemented or not, implemented to my process or not. On the other end, I could, for example, switch to low control, which means that changes always automatically harmonize. So that means I always allow that associated rules or regulations automatically harmonize. And there's also a step in between that only minor changes get harmonized. Right. So this was a quick overview of technologies which help you to stay compliant, to make your regulatory management easier. There are more such technologies available on our platform. If you are interested, please get back to us, and we are happy to show you more. Well, then back to you, Armin. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. In this second section of the presentation, I want to close the gap from digitization in general to the industry-specific requirements. Typically, global companies follow the US Code of Federal Regulations, Title 21, Part 11, or in short, just called Part 11. Why is this? Because one could argue, I'm not located in the US, why should I follow US regulations? Well, for my view, this has two reasons. First is it is de facto a best practice standard, similar to ISO 9000, which is used everywhere. This is in the pharmaceutical industry a similar best practice. Second, and even more important, is if you plan to export to the US market, these regulations apply anyhow, and therefore most of the companies are using this framework. On the right, you see a visualization to separate the terms computer system and computerized system. I know for those who are not so familiar with this industry, this is maybe a bit confusing. The computer system is a classical delivery of software to the vendor. So what software vendors did in the past. The computerized system is everything around including. So the processes and the people who are working with the system and what they are asked to do. As aspects from this Part 11, I picked out here some requirements. In orange, you see requirements towards the computer system, what the software vendor has to deliver. This includes the requirements for the integrity of the record, the famous electronic signature, or as part of the record, the change history, also called audit trail. In green, you see more aspects which are pointing on the process around, so to make the computerized system complete, and this has to be created and delivered in the implementation project, in the validation process. Going to the details of the validation process to ensure that everything is implemented in the proper way, you see here first a visualization of the typical sub-elements of the overall process. process. Yeah, it starts with the qualification of the IT infrastructure. Then we come to the setup and the implementation of the computerized system, which is followed by the operations, and as special purposes, we have the retirement of the system and the migration of data. I want to draw your attention to the right, where you see a list of roles. And in this context, it is important to understand, or my point is to raise the understanding that a software vendor nowadays has to deliver more than just the software itself. We have the role of the business owner of the system. We have the system owner, typically in IT, the quality assurance, which has the oversight over the validation process. These are the classical roles in this context. We have, if we do not have a self-developed solution and IT system supplier, okay, this is also more or less normal. What is more and more important in the context of cloud solutions, and meanwhile most of the customers decide for cloud solutions, we have the role of the IT service provider, and this is not in-house anymore, but that is a requirement towards interfacing and its competitors. So the expectation is that interfacing technologies fulfills the roles and the obligations of an IT service provider. And as, of course, they have to adopt the respective concepts and understand what the expectations are in this context here. What can interfacing offer to your project? Well, what I called here base service is that, of course, a software vendor has to deliver a compliant computer system, yeah, according part 11, what I explained on page 10. And as mentioned on the last slide, the obligations of an IT system supplier and the IT service providers has to be, let's say, basics, which comes without saying, if you would like to provide software to the industry. What we could offer in addition is to give some guidance. So, for example, to create a validation plan for you, to provide document templates, or to advise you through the process. So the customer would do the validation, but we would give any kind of guidance you want to have. In a full service scenario, we would offer to execute all the computer system validation tasks for you, means to create all documents and to conduct all of the testings. Sign off, of course, then is depending on the quality assurance agreement, typically with the customer. So let me wrap up what we have heard and seen. In the regulated industries, the major obstacle towards a digital management system are existing regulations. Methods like business process management and tools like interfacing EPC are proven enablers of a transformation. We have seen tangible financial and non-financial benefits which are feasible. Interfacing fulfills base GXP requirements and is offering, in addition, industry and customer specific services. So thank you very much for your attention so far. And now the stage is open for your questions and feedback.
Thank you very much, Armin. Most appreciated. It's a great presentation. We now have some time for Armin and Mirko to answer some of the questions you've submitted during this session. I know you've received a lot of information today, And we do have a few questions submitted to ask our panel of experts. Let's start with our first question. When you show the regulatory management features, does that work for any industry? I think this one is for Armin.
Well, yeah. It's for the technical part, it's also for Mirko. I would say the basic principles behind are for any kind of regulated industry relevant, and nowadays nearly every industry is regulated to some extent. Of course, we have pharma-specific aspects, yeah, but the base principle, yeah, you saw Mirko showed the example of data privacy. Yeah, so that makes it obvious that this applies to every industry. Mirko, would you like to add something?
Yes, thank you, Armin. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So basically, our platform is industry agnostic, or in other words, anyone from any industry can use the platform and all the technologies that are provided with it. And that, of course, includes our regulatory and rule management technologies. So the answer is clearly yes. All the technologies that I've been showing to you are available to any industry and to any function, any function within a corporation.
Thank you very much, Mirko. And the next question we have, what industry or organization must use or is required to use a system validation?
Yeah, let's say from a formal point of view, the term validation comes from the, let's call it GXP environment. Yeah, so the formal validation in the sense I showed is for pharma companies and around, so medical devices and so on. The basic principle behind, yeah, so to set up requirements and to test it, of course, this applies to every software implementation, especially in a quality management system, where you have certain level of expectations. So I would say also in other industries, we can adopt a lot of the principles.
Thank you very much, Armin. The next question deals with CSV. What prerequisites would be needed before going into a CSV engagement?
Basically, none. Yeah, because the typical starting point is that you do not have a lot prepared before you start with computer system validation. The first step in every validation project is to decide if validation is necessary or not, assuming that has happened. The next step is then to define the user requirements, but this is already part of the validation. Yeah, so in this sense, no prerequisites.
Thank you very much, Armin. Now, this question here might be for Mirko, I'm only guessing. When you showed the parser and it was fragmenting the document, can you explain that concept again?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the parser, you can load into the parser basically any type of document. So it means any type of text, let's put it like this. The parser can handle the most common formats of documents like Word documents or PDF documents. And what the parser is really a self-learning tool. So it means when you teach the parser that, as I had shown it in the live demo, that Article 1 is the name of a regulatory fragment or of a rule, then the parser learns that and will apply this learning within the same document or also in other documents. And I think a better example to explain that is with roles. So we have our parser by today, it knows already more than 1,000 different role names. So we have been training the parser and we continue to train the parser. So it is really now, the parser is now capable to automatically identify role names in any document and to kind of transfer this role then into the repository. So that is really, so the basic concept of the parser is to take a static document which contains a lot of information about, again, about regulatory information, role information, information about systems and assets, information about risks and so on. So procedures. So the system, the parser recognizes these elements and can basically convert them into individual digital objects. And that is really, that is a true example for digital transformation from static document to a digital repository, which is then basically over time will develop into a 360 blueprint of your organization.
Thank you, Mirko. We have another question, and it may be a clarification question, but probably for Armin, I believe. Is Title 21 an industry requirement legally, or is it a guideline to follow?
It's a guideline. Yeah. You find often, here's a term from the FDA, we recommend to, yeah, ... But if you have an audit from the FDA and let's say you have a complete different understanding, then you might have deviations, and therefore anybody is very interested to use it as law.
Excellent.
Yeah, but
Thank
from
you.
a formal point of view, no.
Thank you, Armin. Appreciate it. Okay, so it looks like we're heading to the top of the hour, and it's probably a good time to move on from here. Once again, I want to thank Armin Fiedler for his excellent presentation. It was very interesting. I'd like to mention that Interfacing offers a digital twin solution that documents, analyzes, improves, digitizes, and monitors your business processes. For more information on our Enterprise Process Center and digital business platform, can be found at www.interfacing.com. So to close out, thank you for attending. And soon after this webinar, you'll receive a brief survey and email where you can download and share today's presentation and webinar. You'll also have our contact information. So I urge you to reach out. And if you have any questions regarding your process-based initiatives, please feel free to ask. With that, I'd like to wish you all a good morning, a good day, and a good evening. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.
Thank you, goodbye.